Okay, Bobby and I are going through the basic ATD Evaluation Checklist, and the first part is to determine that the aviation training device has the following required physical and virtual controls. So number one is the master battery switch.
Okay, so here we have the master battery switch. The switch on this panel applies to the piston helicopters that we model. We also have a battery switch up here. This applies to all the turbine aircraft that we model.
Okay, and the Magneto switch.
Here we have our magneto. You can set to left, right, or both. We're off.
Okay, the alternator switch.
Okay, we have the alternator switch for the pistons on this panel, and we have the generator, which applies to the turbine helicopters on this overhead panel.
A fuel boost pump switch.
Fuel boost pump.
The Avionics master switch.
The Avionics master.
The pitot heat switch.
We have the pitot heat switch up here. Right here.
Okay. The rotating beacon strobe light switch.
So we have the strobes right here.
Okay. Navigation taxi and landing light switch.
So we have the nav lights here, and we have the landing lights here.
Okay. Okay, that's
go.
Okay, we're now going to determine that the aviation training device has the required physical controls for the following. The first one is cyclic pitch control.
Here's our cyclic for the pitch and roll.
Okay. And collective pitch and throttle control.
Here's collective and our throttle.
Okay. And anti-torque.
Anti-torque pedals down here.
Okay, and those are adjustable distance from the pilot as well, right?
Correct.
Mixture control.
Here we have a mixture which applies to the piston helicopters that we model.
Okay, what about landing gear is not applicable? Carburetor heat, if applicable.
We do have a carb heat switch down here on the floor.
Okay, right down here. You see that? Cowl flaps are not applicable. Altimeter.
Okay, so we have an altimeter with 20-foot increments here. We can control the needle with the knob here.
The barometric setting.
Yes.
Okay. Communication and nav radios.
Okay, so we have several radios in here. We have a Garmin 430, which is hooked into our radio number 1. We also have our COM and nav Bendix King radios down here, which are also tuned into radio number 1. So these things, these frequencies replicate each other. For example, if I tune 120.0 down here, I see 120.0 pop up on the GPS.
Okay.
Vice versa, if I set 112.0 on the nav on the GPS, I see 112.0 on the nav Bendix King radio below. So we have radio 1 here, radio 1 here. We use this to allow the students to fly with a GPS if they want to. If they don't want a GPS, you can simply turn this off and only use the Bendix Kings down here.
Okay.
Here we have our nav, or radio 2, so our COM 2 and our nav 2. Here we have our transponder, and here we have our ADF.
Okay. So you talked about the transponder clock.
Here we have a clock with a second hand on it.
Okay. And the microphone with push to talk switch.
Okay, we have our headsets here that have the microphones on it, and we have our push to talk switch here.
Okay, and that's on either cyclic. Okay. That's the end of that section. All of these items are duplicates, but we're going to go through them since they're on the checklist. So, number 1 is altimeter with incremental markings each 20 feet or less, operable throughout the normal operating range of the helicopter.
Here's the altimeter.
And it also has a baro adjusting knob. Okay.
Yes.
Flight instruments in a standard T configuration.
So here's our 6-pack.
Okay. compass, which displays typical incremental markings.
Magnetic compass here.
Okay, and those are 5-degree divisions, right?
Yes.
Okay, heading indicator with incremental markings each 5 degrees or less displayed in a 360-degree circle.
Okay, so we have our heading indicator here as part of our HSI.
Okay.
With the appropriate increments.
Okay. And I see it has a flag on it so that we can make that fail, right?
Yes.
Airspeed indicator with incremental markings as shown on the aircraft presented.
Here's our airspeed indicator.
Okay. Vertical speed indicator with incremental markings of 100 feet per minute for both climb and descent.
Vertical speed indicator.
Okay. And at each 500 foot per minute climb and descent for the remainder of the 2000. Okay, and that has. Okay. Attitude indicator with incremental markings each 5 degrees of pitch or less.
Attitude indicator.
Okay, and those are 5-degree increments. And from 20 degrees pitch up to 40 degrees pitch down. There's 20 up, and the 40 down would come up if you were pitched down that far. Bank angles must be minimally identified at wings level 10, 20, 30, and 60 degrees.
Here we have.
Okay, 0, 10, 20, 30, 60, and 90. Engine instruments as applicable to the helicopter or family of helicopters being represented.
So here are the appropriate engine gauges for this particular helicopter.
Okay, and it has to provide markings for normal range and minimum and maximum limits.
Which they all do.
Okay, it's got the red line, the yellow line, and the green range. Right? For all of the gauges. Okay, suction gauge or instrument pressure gauge is applicable. It's not in this. These gauges are all electric, right?
Correct.
Airspeed indicator with incremental markings is shown on the helicopter represented.
Airspeed indicator.
Communication radios with displays of the radio frequency in use.
Again, our communication radios, radio 1, radio 1, radio 2, transponder, and ADF.
Okay, and frequencies are shown on both of these. Navigation receivers capable of replicating both precision and non-precision approaches, including approach procedures with an oral ID feature and a marker beacon receiver for ILS approaches.
Okay, so we can use our radios to ident the nav aid that we're tuned to. On the instrument panel here we have, in this particular aircraft, an HSI, which will show the CDI, deviation, and the glide slope. And then we have a second CDI needle here that'll show the deviation for a localizer for either a VOR or localizer approach.
Okay, and this will show deviation for also the GPS if it's selected.
Right. We can couple this to our 430 for GPS approaches.
Marker lights.
And marker beacon receiver is here. Now, can we light this up with a lights test? Will that show them too?
No.
Okay. Clock with a sweep second hand.
Here's the clock
And
with the second hand.
markings. Okay. Magnetic compass with incremental markings each 10 degrees or less.
Magnetic compass.
Transponder panel, which displays the current transponder setting.
Transponder.
Okay. Fuel quantity indicator, which displays the fuel remaining either in analog or digital format.
Here is the fuel gauge.
Okay. And that particular one is in gallons. Okay. All instrument displays listed above are Visible during all flight operations.
Yes.
Do not appear to be out of focus or illegible.
Correct.
Do not appear to jump or step to a distracting degree during operation.
Correct.
Why don't we demonstrate that with the heading bug?
Okay.
You rotate that. It's nice and smooth. Okay. Does not appear with distracting jagged lines or edges.
Correct.
Okay. End of page.
End of page. Okay.
Okay. This section is for all instrument displays that were listed above must sense a change and react at a value less than the stated values down here. Display updates must display all changes that are equal to or greater than the values stated below. So we're going to show a couple of these things on the ground, and then we'll have to fly it to show you the changes in the others. The first one is the tachometer, showing a change at 25 RPM.
Okay, so roll a tack up there.
Okay, and notice that those divisions are in divisions of 1/10 of a percent.
And the governor
or
being?
1%, I'm sorry. And also, what do we have, the governor? The governor.
I'm able to use the governor beep to control the RPM here.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to look at the airspeed indicator, the attitude indicator, the altimeter as we fly it. So let's go ahead and take it off, and then I'll point out the different instruments here.
Now watch your left leg over there.
All right, first one is the airspeed indicator. We're looking at 0 here, and level on the attitude indicator. Now as we increase our airspeed, notice that the attitude indicator is reflecting very smoothly the change in pitch and roll, and our airspeed indicator is nice and smooth, and it's showing 5 knot increments. The altimeter changes of 10 feet. You can see that you can tell you can even detect like 5-foot increments. Heading indicator, change of 2 degrees. As you can see, it's nice and smooth, and you can see very small changes. Vertical speed indicator, changes of 100 feet per minute. And you can see that that smoothly indicates the change in the vertical speed. In the same fashion that a normal VSI works. And we'll go out, and we need to show the VOR and ILS change of 1 degree for VOR and a quarter of a degree for the ILS.
Okay, so I'll tune a VOR into my Nav1 radio here.
Okay.
I'll head towards that VOR.
And there's our course deviation indicated.
So now we're heading directly towards the VOR. We're right on this particular radio. I'll deviate from that radio.
And you notice that it's changing smoothly as we deviate from the inbound bearing or the outbound radio. We're actually going the inbound bearing. So that you can see now for the ILS, we'll have to tune the localizer in, and we can do the back course because we don't need to go out on the other side of the airport.
Okay, so I'll tune the
187.
ILS in for the airport here.
Okay. And remember, if we're on the back course, you fly away from the needle. That's this one. With this one, you don't have to.
Okay, I see my CDI coming in. I'm lining up with the airport out there. And again, we have the smooth CDI needle.
Right. And you can see that it changes with very small increments of positional change, which is what you want. Okay, so we're going to mark that off. And now the ADF, we have to tune and show changes in 2-degree increments.
Okay, so I've already tuned this into an NDB here. The yellow needle is pointing to that NDB on our ADF indicator, which is part of the RMI here. And we can see the smooth increments here as I change my bearing.
Okay. Okay, good. I checked that one off. Clock or timer, change in 1 second. We've got that. Displays reflect dynamic behavior of the actual helicopter display. For example, PSI reading reflects the corresponding movement in altimeter, and it does.
Well, if I descend at 500 feet a minute, we can see the altimeter coming down.
Okay. And an increase in power reflects an increase in RPM indication. In this case,
well, we have a governor in here, so the RPM is not going to change. The governor is controlling the TAC RPM here.
Okay, but it will reflect the increase in the torque. So if you change that, go ahead and do it, and we'll show that the torque changes. Okay, there we are. And notice that when he changes the power, he has to compensate with the pedals. Okay, that's the end of that section. Okay, we're going to show that the flight dynamics are comparable to the way the training helicopter, which is at Bell 206B, handles. And right now, Bobby's got it hovering.
I'll go ahead and do a takeoff here.
Okay. Airspeed's increasing, and now we're climbing. Does that feel like a normal 206?
Feels good to me.
Okay. Good. Okay, and why don't you just take it down and land it, just to make sure it feels like it's okay when you land it. Notice that the ball is very accurate here, so it gives you a good indication of whether you're using the right amount of torque pedal. And also, we have a radar altimeter that helps us tell how far off the ground we are. But we still have a good vision down below our feet, which gives us a good feeling of how our movement is, and also how high we are. Have to apply torque pedal when you change the power, which is the way it's supposed to be, right?
Yep.
Okay, so it handles like the real helicopter. I'm going to check that. Now the helicopter performance parameters, we've already been in hover, but we're going to take it off, pick the airplane up to the best rate of climb airspeed, which is listed here as 52 knots for this weight. Once he does that, we're going to see how it compares to. Now you just turn it around and say, go down the runway. Okay, here we go. So we're going to put takeoff power in it. We're going to go to 52 knots and hold that and see if the rate of climb is about 1,400 feet a minute, which is what the book says it will do. that's starting to come up right around 1,400 feet a minute. Pull the nose up just a bit. Okay, there we go. So we're coming back to our maximum rate of climb speed. So that agrees. Okay, that's our maximum rate of climb. Now we go into cruise speed, which is typically what, 80?
About 80% on the torque.
And I see it's got a blue line there at 100. Okay, why don't we take it up a little higher and then we'll dive it so that we can go to the never exceed speed. Which is the red line. Looks like it's about 129.
Okay, so we're in a dive here.
Okay, and we're able to achieve it. Okay, so let's take it back up, head towards the airport, and we've achieved our maximum speed. Now we're going to go back and we'll do an auto rotation. We'll do that from what, 1,700 feet or 2,000?
We'll do it from about 700 feet AGL here,
Okay.
which is about 1,000 feet MSL.
Okay. And while we're on our way back to the airport, what's the procedure you're going to be doing, just so that we can show it?
Okay, so I'll fly in at 1,000 feet MSL and about
Okay.
70 knots. I'll count down 3, 2, 1, and I will roll the throttle down, and I will put the collective down, and I will use the collective to control my rotor RPM. I'm going to hold my airspeed at 70 knots.
70, okay.
And then when I get a little closer to the ground, I'll start my flare and hopefully do a soft touchdown.
Okay.
So we're almost back to the airport here.
There's 70 knots.
There's 70 knots and about 1,000 feet MSL. I'll wait until we get a little bit closer.
Okay.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, rolling the throttle.
Excuse me. Alright, so I'm watching my RPMs here. I'm watching my airspeed. And of course I'm looking out the window. Vertical speed looks good.
Yeah, there's 200 feet. 100 feet.
Alright, let's start my flare here.
Coming in with some collective.
Hold my collective up gently. There we go.
Okay. And that's pretty much like the real helicopter.
Yep.
Okay. We'll check that off. All these parameters. And number 3 says the helicopter simulated aerodynamics must change appropriately to control inputs. Well, I think we've just demonstrated that.
I think so too.
Okay, so we'll check that out. Okay, now that's our basic ATD checklist. Oh no, here we've got one more page. You want to show?
Right.
Okay, the presence and intensity of wind and turbulence must be reflected in the handling and performance qualities of the simulated helicopter. Okay, so Bobby, tell me what we're going to do here.
Okay, to demonstrate the effects of wind in here, we are going to pick the helicopter up into a hover. So we have 0 wind conditions now, and you notice the torque there, we're hovering around 70%. So now, if I hold the same power setting, and I have TJ back at the instructor station at a headwind of 20 knots or so, without changing the power, I'm suddenly climbing. So I'm going to go ahead and lower the power a little bit. And so now I'm hovering about 30 feet in the air, and you can see on the airspeed indicator there that I'm in a hover, yet it shows an airspeed of about 24 knots. TJ had added about 24 knots
you're
of
in a
headwind.
stationary hover, so that's the headwind making the airspeed.
So now if we have TJ change that headwind to a tailwind, and I hold my power setting, suddenly we're falling down to the ground. I have to pull a lot more power to hold a hover here.
Okay.
So because I have a tailwind, I'm pulling in about 80 knots to hold a hover, whereas
80%.
Or sorry, 80%, whereas before I was pulling about 70%.
Okay, and I see that.
Okay.
Okay.
If I were to do a pedal turn, now 80 knots is making me climb because that's a headwind
80%.
again. Sorry, 80% is making me climb because that's a pretty strong headwind again.
Okay.
Okay.
And you're
So there's
down to 60% just to hold the hover.
Yep.
Because you've got all that increased airspeed. Okay.
Okay.
On. All right. Now we're going to show the effect of turbulence on the helicopter and the simulator.
And the way we can show that the turbulence is in fact having an effect in here is we can see that the airspeed needle is jumping back and forth, increasing and decreasing the headwind, which of course is going to make our VSI increase and decrease accordingly.
Right.
Okay?
Okay. Good. We're moving where we show the simulator can be paused here from the instructor station, and TJ is going to pause it right now. Okay, and now if he unpauses it, I'll show that you can do it from, if the instructor's sitting here with the student, you can do it from the control pedestal. Okay, there we go. All right, so now we're at the setup screen, which allows the helicopter's geographic location, heading, airspeed, and altitude to be changed. And that's being changed presently with the cursor on. There's the altitude box that's changing. Here's the heading box. And TJ is going to change the heading to 60 degrees. The airspeed can be changed. And the latitude and longitude can be changed by numbers, or the airplane can simply be dragged on the map. Okay, now we're going to change the wind speed and the wind direction. And we can do with the advanced weather, we can change the wind turbulence by putting gusts in, and put wind shear in it. We can change the cloud layers and the cloud types. And the cloud coverage layers all the way from scattered to overcast. The bases, so we can create ceilings for approaches. Turbulence level can go all the way from light to severe. We can put structural icing all the way up to severe. Precipitation type, rain or snow. And we can change the rate of precipitation all the way to heavy. Here we have heavy rain, and you can see on the screen that it shows very well in the simulator. Okay, here we're showing that the system is capable of recording both horizontal and vertical track of airplane movement for later playback and review. And we flew an instrument approach, and now we're playing back that approach, and you can see the localizer feather, and you can see the vertical deviation on the lower scale. Okay, TJ, tell us about how you can fail different instruments, and
this is the failures
navigation
page. You can fail any of the instruments here. You can fail them immediately, or you can actually arm them to fail within 5 minutes or any time you want to select.
okay,
You can select the time you want it to fail.
all right,
Either immediately, or before takeoff, or 5 minutes after takeoff, or whatever time you want to put in there
Okay.
for any of the main gauges.
yeah. Why don't you show us dynamically?
So this is
the failure of a couple
attitude
of
gauge has failed. As you can see, it's falling, and it's got the attitude flag.
And where did you fail that? On how did you initiate that?
You can do that on the failures page here. So if I remove that failure, you can see the attitude gauge coming back.
Okay.
Stop.
And what about your
Stop.
HSI?
Stop.
Okay, we're going to show that the instructor can disable any of the instruments prior to the beginning of a training session, or to simulate the failure of any of the instruments during the training session without stopping or freezing the simulation to affect the failure. So here,
Well,
TJ
this
is at the
initial.
iOS.
This is before the flight.
Okay.
We can fail any of the gauges, fail them on initial startup, or we can even arm them to fail in 0 to 5 minutes, or we can change these number, 3 to 5 minutes, or any number we can choose.
Okay. Now, why don't you show us the instrument panel and fail a couple of the flight instruments, and we'll see what it looks like.
We can also go in here and select any of the failures here, such as the heading gauge. We can apply that, and the heading indicator has been failed, shown by the flag, and then we'll no longer turn. These are before we're not flying, so you won't see anything actually happen. If I fail the attitude, that flag does come down, and that gauge will start to fall, like it does in the real aircraft.
Okay. So we have an attitude flag, so you have failed that gauge.
Yes. As you
Okay.
can see, the gyro is spinning down, and it's falling like it would in the real aircraft, unless you get it completely seized.
Okay, yeah.
Some of the other failures you won't notice until we're actually flying, such as the pitot system would affect the airspeed. If we fail the altimeter, that needs to be demonstrated while we're flying. We'll go ahead and do that now.
Okay.
Here we'll demonstrate the failures while in flight. As you can see, he's flying over the runway here. All gauges are functional. Go ahead and make a turn.
Okay.
So heading indicator works, attitude works, everything's functional. Airspeed, vertical speed. Over here we can go ahead and do some of the failures, such as we can fail the pitot system. And as we can see here, the airspeed went to 0.
Okay, airspeed's to 0 here.
We can fail turn coordinator, heading indicator. As you can see, now our heading has failed.
Flag on the turn coordinator down here. See that?
So these failures can be done real time.
Flag here and also one down low.
Here shows a map view of the airport, the area we're flying. All navigational information is available in here. Anything that's on the Jeppesen database is in this software. Any of these points you can select and it will give you detailed information about that location. The airport, even the airway boundaries, the ILS, DME information, all radio frequencies, everything's in the software here.
We somehow need to include that in the video someplace. Okay, we're showing that we have a realistic shrouded shrouded cockpit, or open or closed cockpit design and an instrument panel arrangement representing either a generic or a specific model of helicopter cockpit.
Here's the overhead panel, such as in a Bell 206. We have our collective cyclic pedals, instrument panel with radios and avionics switches and all the aircraft switches, as well as all the instrumentation, and a Garmin 430 on top as well.
Okay, and just a point, we have dual cyclics and dual collective controls. And dual pedals. Action.
Action.
Okay, we have obviously the cockpit knobs and controls on the switch panels on our cyclic are all life size, representing the same size you would find on the actual helicopter, and they're in the proper position and distance for a normal helicopter cockpit. As you can see, Bobby's sitting here with his feet on the pedals with the cyclic between, and he's holding on to the collective. And everything else is represented life-size instruments. All of the controllable functions on the instruments are controllable by the knobs down here. For example, the altimeter setting, the OBS 1, and the heading bug. The attitude, we can move the bar up and down to recenter it. Okay, so then we're going to show number 3. We're moving right to it. Primary flight and navigation instruments, approximately life size, that exhibit neither stepping nor excessive transport delay. And you can see that they're nice and smooth. And they're set up on a standard T panel for the navigation instruments, engine instruments over here, just like they are in the helicopter. Number 4 is the digital avionics panel. Here we have digital avionics, as well as our digital Garmin. Okay, we have a visual system that provides acceptable cues both in day and night VFR and IFR. And Bobby's going to take the helicopter off now. We're going to fly up to about a quarter of a mile from the end of the runway, and we'll show you what it looks like in daylight conditions, and then we'll switch to night conditions to show you that we have the night cues as well. So you're cleared to take off. The side view, you get a lot more feeling of where you are with respect to the runway. You can see the runway off to our right, 90 degrees to us. Once Bobby turns it around, we'll be able to see the airport environment. Have the realistic towers here, which if you run into them, you will crash. By the way, we're at Carlsbad Airport in Carlsbad, California. Carlsbad Palomar Airport. So once you get it lined up directly in line with the runway, and then we'll take a good look at what it looks like in the daylight, and we'll switch to nighttime. Notice we have the standard runway markings. Keep it up a little. Well, okay, go down and hit the VASI. We'll show them that the VASI works. Perfect. Okay, TJ, let's freeze it right here. Okay, here we are on visual approach at night to the same airport, and you can see the strobe lights, and you can see the normal ALSAP 2 approach light configuration. I guess it's in ALSAP 1. The flashing runway end identifier lights, as well as the green threshold lights. And on the left is our VASI, which we're going to, we're seeing we're dropping into it right now. 2 reds on the right side, 2 lefts on the left side, so we're right on normal glide path to the runway. Do we have our landing lights on? And we'll be able to see the landing lights illuminating the runway as we get closer. Why don't you just hover taxi it off on the taxiway if you can do it. This takes a higher skill level at night.
We've also got a rotating beacon up there.
Yeah, with the tower over here at our 11 o'clock, going to 10 o'clock.
Close to the ground so you see the taxi light.
We're 15 feet high. Let's take off on the taxiway. Notice that we even have taxiway edge lights, and we have runway and taxiway identifiers that show up here. Taxiing back past the helicopter, or the tower. there's the windsock coming up on the left. Okay, and we're going to set it down right here in front of the tower. Nicely done, nicely done. Helicopter 09 Hotel, you're cleared to take off, maintain runway heading, and maintain 300 feet.
Clear for takeoff, maintain runway heading and 300 feet, 09 Hotel.
Roger. And 09 Hotel, looks like we got a little precipitation.
Want me to maintain 300 MSL then?
Affirmative, and in 60 seconds, why reverse your course and come back over the runway. Snow coming up here. And once you get past the runway, why reverse course and return towards the runway. Looks like the snow is going to turn into rain here. And it looks like you're going to get a little turbulence. And 09 Hotel, you're cleared to go back to the airport and land.
Clear to land, 09 Hotel. Looks like you got a wet runway, so be careful. I appreciate your concern.
And let's see if you blow up some water when you land.
I could blow some dust if I went into the grass here.
Try that. Yeah, you're clear to land in between the runways. Or in between the runway and the taxi. Yeah, clear to land right there. That's good. we're going to show how we can do failures on the instruments, but we can also do partial panel. The first thing we're going to do is fail some instruments. So I'm going to fail the heading instrument. Notice the flag. And while we're doing it, I'm going to fail the attitude display. Notice the flag.
And it falls.
I can turn the turn coordinator. I can fail.
It's flag as well.
Yes. Okay, so now we're going to, I'm going to get rid of those failures. And I'm going to show how we can do partial panel. If I don't want them to look at the attitude instrument. Oh, that's airspeed indicator. Okay. There's our attitude indicator. Here's our altimeter. So that we can do these individually or all together. Now we've cleared them all and we're back to normal. I'm going to do an electrical failure. Okay, I'm going to clear that. Notice that there are lots of flags showing up. Okay, I'm going to clear that. And now I'm going to show that we can do a tail rotor failure.
Action.
Okay, we have the malfunction box here, which I can create malfunctions at the panel or through the box, and I can use the box up there while I'm instructing in the cockpit as well. So I'm going to demonstrate here, we're going to do a tail rotor drive failure, which is a pretty significant problem in this helicopter, so it's very hard to control. So momentarily I'll do the failure and we'll see what happens. Are you able to control where you're going to land?
No.
Okay, that's all right. Okay, it's flying normally now. We're going to have a stuck pedal failure, so I'm going to do that now. Now, why don't you turn, as soon as you're over the end of the runway, turn back to the helicopter, or turn back to the runway.
Pedals.
Okay, one last failure we're going to show is the engine failure capability through our malfunction box.
Or the panel.
Yeah, we can do that through the panel as well. I'm going to use the box this time. And Bobby's going to come back over the runway, or start heading for it anyway. And as soon as he gets up to about 1,000 feet, we're going to fail the engine. He has no idea that this is going to happen. And 09 Hotel, you're cleared to make a pass over the runway at 800 feet.
Here we have the anti-torque pedals, and here we can remove the screw and adjust the pedals fore and aft by a few inches.
Okay, we're doing a GPS Lpv approach to runway 24 at Carlsbad, and as you can see, we're 1.5 miles from Jabal, which is the final approach fix. It says Lpv, so it's got the approach in it, and we have GPS selected, which is what we want for the proper amount of guidance. And we're going to fly this approach down to 737 feet on the barometric altimeter, and if we don't see it, we'll do a miss. We're leaving the visibility up so that you can see what the approach looks like. Bobby's going to fly the approach, and here we go.
Alright, you want to pause it?
Got it. You're on the way. And 09 Hotel, you're 1.5 miles from final approach fix. You're cleared for the GPS approach to runway 24.
Cleared for the GPS approach to runway 24, 09 Hotel.
And what are you going to use for your approach speed?
So I'm going to get it up to about 80 knots here.
Okay. And notice we have, here's our glide path, and here's our horizontal deviation. So it's all on this one gauge. Just past Jabal. Gujik's at 4.9 miles from the runway, and we're 2.5 miles from it. And the gears down, the spoilers are on. Oh, wait a minute, wrong airplane. Okay, so we actually should be looking at the approach checklist. Basically, it's all done. We have fuel. We're set up for the course. We're going to be going down to 737 feet.
Outer marker going off there.
Okay, we're at the outer marker, continuing inbound. Okay, clear to continue. And now we can go down to, at Gujek we need to be at 2,040 feet, but we'll, as long as we're on this glide path, we're okay, and we'll go down to 737 feet, which will be 411 feet above the runway. And just as a backup, we can't fly according to this, but I wanted to show this working. I'm going to put the 411 foot altitude in here. right now. We're at 1,311 feet. Straight ahead on the localizer to 3,000 feet, and then we're going to intercept 325 inbound to Oceanside, and I'll tune the radios if we need to. Okay. We're out 500 feet above the field, and we're going down to 737 feet. There it is. Runway's in sight, and you're cleared to land. Just keep going, land on 1,001 foot spot, and if there's a donkey on the runway, we'll do a missed approach. Okay, 09 Hotel, there's traffic on the runway. Please perform the published missed approach. There's our suspend button. I'm going to press that again. Okay, you're climbing straight ahead and you're going to 3,000 feet. Nice approach. Thank you. Now we're getting guidance from the GPS again because I took it off suspend and now it says GPS. It's actually going to take us out. This missed approach is different than the one we briefed. This is going to take us out to Ibugi, and we'll hold there. We could do that, but I think in the interest of time, we're going to do the one we briefed.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to put it in OBS. We're going to go to
Pause this and move it.
I need to switch. So here we go. I just- Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear you direct to Oceanside from this point and hold on your inbound heading right turns.
Okay. There's your inbound heading, 330. Okay, now whenever my altitude will be a few hundred feet, so I'll send back down a little.
Okay. get there, so our inbound heading is going to be 330, our outbound heading is going to be 150.
Okay.
And TJ, if in the interest of time, if you want to double the speed of the simulator, you can do that, otherwise we'll just take the extra time to get there.
Want about a mile out?
Yeah, a mile.
Oh! Recover? That was your retreating blade stall from the high-speed entry. More sensitive? Oh.
Alright, so I just lost my VOR radio. Am I starting my turn now?
Yeah, you good. Okay, we're over it. Yep. So start your timer. I got it. So we're going to turn around to our outbound radio, which is going to be 150. Once we're established outbound, we'll fly outbound for 1 minute, and then we'll turn back in and intercept our radio. Coming up on your heading. And then we're going to wait till it switches. It just did. I've got your time. We're going to go for 1 minute outbound. Seconds to go. Okay, start your turn back. Now you want to go about 30 degrees shy of the radio unless you see it start moving.
Okay.
Starting to move, just keep that right under the lever line, the tip of this thing, and I'll put you right on it. Once we get over the VOR, we'll freeze it, and then we'll talk about the VOR approach. Nice job. Nice job. Now, the thing is, I think I
And here's the holding pattern they just did in the simulator while they were flying.
motion sensors. As long as we have the number 1 DME on here, we're going to see it. Ionics. So we're going to start, we're going to hold our altitude.
And here's the holding pattern they just flew.
920 feet. Okay. So
Go.
and I've got your time started.
So what are we doing here?
We're going outbound. We're going to do a left teardrop back to the inbound course to the final approach fix.
And this is our VOR alpha approach, correct?
This is a VOR alpha to circle to land, and this is going to be circle to land runway 24 at Carlsbad. Okay, got 30 seconds to go. And when we do our turn, this is a long turnaround. You're going to go all the way this way and then back to a 030 degree heading to intercept that inbound radio. Okay, let's start a left turn. All the way around to 030. Just like you did before, you know, when you see that thing move, just put it on the top edge of this thing, put you right on it. There it's moving, so just go for it. We're closer, so it's happening faster. Nicely done. So we're about a mile from the VOR, so I'm going to put the outbound radial in here. You just keep flying on that orange bug until we cross over. Okay? Hold that heading for a couple of seconds. You don't want to chase it because we're right over the VOR. Okay? Once it gets out a little ways, then we'll make corrections for it. And start your descent. We're going to 1,300 feet. Try to get about 800 feet a minute down. The reason we want more than 500 feet a minute is we want to be able to get down there soon enough. Notice how that's starting to come back in anyway. If you started to try and chase it, you'd be all over the place. Once we get down to 1,300, then we'll have to hold that altitude until we get to 70. Okay. have our DME, but we also have the distance printed out on our GPS, which is just as accurate, sometimes more depending on the altitude. Okay, we're 500 feet above minimums. The minimum is 1,300.
So I need to hold 1,300.
Yeah, once you get to 1,300, you need to hold it for, and that's going to be actually for a few miles, because we're going to have 3.5 miles to go at 1,300. So. Radar altimeter isn't doing you any good until you're where there aren't any hills for doing approaches to runways. Mile and a half to go. And these hills are wide. There's an intermediate step down fix of 1,300. If we descended to 920 feet wide, we'd probably be scraping somebody's rooftop. It's from all good, looking good. Right on your radio. runway by 9.4, then we'd 9.4. So that's what it looks like when you're at 9.4. You see the runway, you're clear to land. You're ready.
550 feet above the field.
Should we put her down in the helipad there?
Why don't you put it on the runway just because we're doing the approach to the runway? Just to kind of finish it off. Right on the 2-4. You can make it. Yeah. There you go. Okay, here we are. All right, so the only thing, okay, camera on. Okay, we're gonna fly the NDB approach at Chandler, Arizona, and it's 050 outbound to do a procedure turn, go back in at 230. Oh, it's 050 inbound, so it's 230 outbound. We're going to go out, do the procedure turn, and once we fly outbound over the VOR, we can descend to 2,800 feet until we're turned back inbound, and then we're going to go down to 1,780 feet, which is 540 feet above the field.
So we're on the wrong side of the field then. So I moved us out 050.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you want to start over?
Yeah, stop that.
Yeah, stop that.
Go.
Okay, we're on our way. You ready?
So we're doing an NDB approach to Chandler, right?
Yes. And we're going to circle, actually it's going to be almost a straight in, but it's a straight into 4 right. So if we do that, we can go down to 1,780 feet after we, this is until we finish our turn and we're established
Lean over
inbound.
a little bit so you can see.
We're established inbound, we go from 2,800 down to 1,780.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, I'm gonna unpause it. You gotta unsloom TJ.
Okay, we're on our way. Yeah, pick up 240 heading inbound. Notice we're turning away from the needle until we get it where we want it to be. Actually, you want to be turning through the see how it's going the wrong way. Turn back to the left. I give you the wrong hand. This is not indicating right, so yeah, turn left another 10 degrees or so, and it'll. Remember, we turn past the needle in order to make it correct for us when we're going inbound. Main thing is when we're getting close to the airport, you can just head right for the needle and then turn outbound on your outbound heading, which is going to be 230.
Lean over a little bit here, I can see. Yeah. We can do that.
That's what we're flying, right? Which one was tuned? This one says 8. Okay,
there.
all right, gotcha. I was just wondering. Okay, there it is. So now you're going to turn to 230.
Okay.
I'm starting our timing. We're going to go outbound for a minute and a half. Give us a little more. And we're going down to 2,800 feet.
Okay.
Going away from it, we drag the needle, so it's 220, we want to be at 230, so go over to 240 where you're heading, and see if we can drag the needle down. There we go, there's 230, so go back to your 230 heading. Okay, there's 1 minute. So turn left to heading 185. And 185 degrees. Time again, we're going to do this for 1 minute. And we're at 2,800 feet. So just hold this altitude until we get all the way turned back around. By the way, on an NDB approach, you always want to have the identifier audio available so that you know that it's still working while you're using it. Okay, there's 1 minute. So start to turn back to 005, right turn to 005. Standard rate of turn. Getting pretty close to 050 inbound, so I keep my turn going right to 050. Okay. Now we're inbound, so we can drop down to 1,780. Here, the missed approach point will be when the needle swings again, right over the NDB.
Okay.
Now when if that thing starts getting too far off to the left, then you want to turn past it. You don't drag the head, you turn away from it, so you want to turn in past it. Right now it's on 050, it's looking good. And we've got 500 feet to go. 1780, so you get just a tad low, just pull back up to 1780. Right back onto our 050, which is what I want to be. So I would hold 050 now because we're getting very close to the field. Normally we would see the field down and we'd land on it, but I want it to swing just so we know we're at the missed approach. Okay. Then we'll just turn around and land the other way. You see it starting to swing. You don't want to chase it here because you know that's because we're really close to it. Okay. Okay, now it's swinging. This be our missed approach point, and in this case, we would go around, but now we have the runway, and you're clear to land. Clear to land. There's 22 right. You're clear to land on 22 right.
Clear to land 22 right.
So, camera off. Okay, this is a demonstration of translational lift, and Bobby's going to explain what he's going to do here.
Okay, so I'm going to pick the helicopter up into a hover, like so. I have the friction on the collective turned on, so I can remove my hand from the collective here. So now I'm going to push the cyclic forward and not touch the collective. As our airspeed builds up to 20 knots or so, we're going to get some vertical speed, as you can see here, and now we are in effective translational lift. We're able to climb out.
Awesome. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to do a running takeoff. So I'm going to pull some power, get the skids light on the ground, push the cyclic forward, and we'll go through effective translational lift and we will take off.
And then we're going to do a running landing right after that.
So skids are still on the ground here. And now we're off the ground. And we'll go ahead and do a run on landing. So I'll lower the power. The skids are down. And there's our run on landing. Come to a stop. And we made it.
We're doing a square around the numbers. You got it on?
Yep.
Okay. What are you doing, Bobby?
So we're just doing some private pilot maneuvers here. We're just making a square around the runway numbers.
Okay. You're 4 feet off the ground. The skids are 4 feet off the ground, so it's a nice low altitude maneuver.
Sideways flight and then a quick stop or something.
Okay. We'll do some sideways flight here. To the left first.
Can the camera see this?
Yeah, let me
Tell me when.
okay, and do a sideways flight.
Okay. Go to the right first. Clear my tail. Tail is clear.
doing a 360 around the tower while we're keeping pointed towards it. Good coordination maneuver. Great, now let's go back and land on the helipad. We haven't done that yet. There's our helipad at 12 o'clock, right next to the blast fence. Okay, this is going to be a startup procedure for the Bell 206B model, which we have in it right now. So Bobby's going to do the start. I'm going to read the checklist. So we check the Hobbs meter.
Check.
Seat belts as required.
Check.
Collective, full down, friction on.
Check.
Pedals, neutral.
Pedals neutral, check.
Throttle, full travel. Open and then fully closed.
Check.
Landing light, off.
Landing light off, check.
Overhead switches off.
Switches are off, check.
Battery switch on.
Battery switch on, check.
Fuel boost pump breakers in.
So one fuel pump breaker in, check.
Okay, fuel valve switch on.
Fuel valve switch is on.
Fuel pressure, check within limits.
Got pressure on breaker 1, and I've got pressure on breaker 2, check.
Okay. Fuel quantity,
Check.
overhead circuit breakers, all in.
Check.
And beacon light on.
So anti-collision light on, check.
Generator switch reset to off.
Reset off, check.
Caution warning lights, test.
Warning lights, check.
Okay. All right, that's the before start checklist is complete. We're ready to do the starting engine checklist.
Okay.
Okay, rotor blades untied.
Got 90,
Visual check.
90 and 70 untied, check.
9270, okay. Area clear.
Clear.
Clear on my side. Okay, collective, friction on, and pedals neutral.
Check.
Throttle fully closed.
Fully closed, check.
Okay, we're going to start timing our start. They're right on there.
Watching the clock here.
Okay, so go ahead and engage the starter. We're looking for a starting limitation. Don't increase the throttle to flight idle if you can't reach 12%.
Okay, so I'm watching the gas reducer here for at least 12, but I'm going for about 15%.
Okay.
And then I'll monitor the TOT to make sure it doesn't go over the 810 for 10 seconds or over the 927 for 1 second.
Okay.
And if the rotor is not turning by 25%, I'll do a shutdown.
Okay.
Or if the TOT is going hot, I'll do a shutdown. So
Okay.
here we go.
All right, so let's start the timing from here. So I've got the timing.
We're watching the TOT.
There's the TOT.
My rotor is spinning already.
Okay.
So I'm going to hold the gas reducer until we get to 60%.
Okay. We're looking for 60% here.
There we go.
Okay, there we got our 60%. The starter is released. And throttle increase to flight idle.
Okay. Check.
All right, the blades aren't turning by 25% N1, then abort to start. We already have that.
Yeah, so we're down here.
So you've already released at 60%. Okay. Caution breaker in.
Check.
Fuel pump breaker in.
Check.
Avionics master on.
Avionics master.
Engine and transmission gauge. Check for proper.
Alright, so we've got our engine oil transmission here. Everything's in green.
Okay. Stabilize engine for 1 minute. We're almost there. Throttle increase to 70%.
So 70% in one. Right here. Check.
Okay, and generator on.
Check.
Okay, load there. Collective cyclic friction on.
Friction is off. Check.
And throttle increase to 100%.
Alright, 20%.
Okay, so that's the end of the starting engine checklist. We're up to the before takeoff check. So here we go. This is the before takeoff phase. Before takeoff checklist, safety belts,
Check.
and ask all passengers, engine and transmission gauges within limits.
I see greens on all the engine instruments here, and our rotor and turbine are in the green as well.
Okay. And Altimeter, set it to field elevation.
Set the field elevation check.
Or 360 feet, that works. Flight instruments check. Attitude gyro erect.
Attitude.
DG alignment.
is correct.
And transponder to altitude.
Transponder set to altitude, check.
Okay. Lights is required.
We got our strobes on, check.
Okay, we get our strobes on. Okay, that's before takeoff. So for takeoff, the checklist says collecting pitch to hover, observe TOT and torque limit, and direction control with a cyclic as required. So
Okay.
before takeoff is complete. There we go. You're cleared to take off. Okay, everything's within limits. Airspeed's increasing like it's supposed to, so the airspeed indicator works. DSI is going to start working here. There it is, working. Altimeter's climbing like it's supposed to. The magnetic compass is working, and our HSI is working. We have a nav flag because we don't have a local frequency put in there.
That's now too. That'll be the problem. You want to change this in here?
That's nav. Oh, yeah, okay. And the flag's gone away on our HSI, and the CDI is working. And I'm going to take OBS 1 and point it so that we can see that it's working properly if we're going to Oceanside, which is right over there. Okay, we're going to go into a downwind here. Notice that the compass on our ADF indicator is working too on our RMI. In a standard rate turn, the ball is working. And helicopter 09er Hotel, you're cleared to land.
Clear the land, so we'll go direct to the numbers here.
Direct to the numbers. And notice you can see well out the sides. Get a lot better feel for where you are. Before landing checklist, friction off.
Friction is off, check.
Rotor RPM at 100%.
Rotor's at 100, check.
Lights is required.
Have my strobes on,
I'll get the
check.
landing lights on. And you're clear to land. Altimeter says 0. Oh, 4 feet. That's because we're 4 feet above the ground. Okay, so after landing checklist, friction on for flight controls.
Friction is on, check.
Landing light off.
Landing light off, check.
Throttle decrease to flight idle.
Decrease to flight idle, check.
And we're going to time it for 2 minutes while it stabilizes. 2 minutes and 15 seconds, and then we'll shut down. Transponder to standby.
Standby, check.
And the one passenger that's left, passengers exiting safety briefing. do that if we have passengers. Today we don't. And after 2 minutes and 15 seconds, we can go through the engine shutdown checklist. Notice we have good signs for the taxiways too. Okay, I'm going to time dilate this. Okay, there's 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And we'll go through the engine shutdown. Throttle closed.
Throttle's closed, the engine's shutting down.
Fuel valve closed.
Fuel valve closed.
Caution breaker out.
Check.
Fuel boost pumps out.
Check.
Avionics master off.
Avionics off. Check.
Generator off.
Generator off. Check.
Okay, instruments. Note the TOT and N1 decrease
And 1
to 0.
0 already, and the TOT is coming down here.
Okay. Battery on.
Battery is off.
Rotor. Use the rotor brake when necessary. Apply after 30%.
Okay.
Off. Record the time.
Check.
Okay, that's the engine shutdown checklist is complete. And the after shutdown just says install the main rotor tie down and secure the blades to the tail boom. Install the engine protecting covers and plugs, and the post-flight inspection. End of checklist.
Okay.
All right, we're demonstrating the motion system now, and Bobby's flying it, and he's hovering it right now. And if he steps on the pedal, you can see it slew to the side. Do it the other way. So that's the motion system in action. And if you come up closer, you can look at the ball as he's doing it, so you can see that the simulator is yawing and skidding when he's doing this.
Go.
That's what we want to see. That verifies that it's actually slipping and skidding, and that's what's causing the simulator to move back and forth, giving it the impression, the feel from the skid and the
Here we are showing the flight path of the aircraft.